Welcome back, gentle traveler, to another peaceful journey through the ancient lore of the Elder Scrolls universe. I'm honored to be your guide once more, as we explore the deeper mysteries of Tamriel and beyond. This is Elder Scrolls Loretosleepto, where we uncover the rich tapestry of stories that form this beloved world in a way designed to help you relax, unwind, and perhaps drift into peaceful slumber. In our previous journey together, we explored the very origins of existence itself, the eternal dance of Anu and Padome, the birth of the Atada, and the great sacrifice that created the mortal realm of Nirn. We witnessed the convention that established time and the emergence of the first beings who would shape the world we know. Tonight we turn our attention to perhaps the most enigmatic artifacts in all of Tamriel's history, the Elder Scrolls themselves. These mystical parchments, from which the entire series draws its name, remain one of the greatest mysteries even to the most learned scholars within the universe itself. They are neither fully physical objects nor purely metaphysical concepts, but something that exists at the intersection of reality and possibility. In this episode, Scrolls of Destiny, we will explore what little is truly known about these inscrutable artifacts. We will learn about the dedicated Moth Priests who devote their lives to reading and interpreting the scrolls, often at the cost of their sight and eventually their minds. We will contemplate the nature of prophecy in a world where multiple futures might exist simultaneously, and we will delve into the fascinating concept of dragon breaks, those moments when time itself fractures and multiple realities exist in parallel. As we embark on this exploration, I invite you to settle comfortably, whether you're lying in bed, resting on a couch, or simply sitting in a quiet place. Allow your body to find its natural position of ease. Perhaps take a few gentle breaths, feeling the rising and falling of your chest, letting each exhalation carry away a small portion of the day's tensions. There's no need to actively memorize the information we'll discuss tonight. The mysteries of the Elder Scrolls are, by their very nature, beyond complete comprehension. Even within the universe itself, the greatest scholars admit that full understanding of the scrolls may be impossible. So rather than trying to grasp every detail, simply let the stories and concepts wash over you like waves on a peaceful shore. As we discuss these ancient artifacts and their implications, you might find your mind drifting, perhaps imagining the cold, silent chambers of the white gold tower where many scrolls were once kept, or the serene ritual spaces of the Moth Priests as they commune with knowledge from beyond time. This gentle drifting of attention is perfectly natural and may even enhance your experience of this lore, allowing your unconscious mind to form connections and images that your waking thoughts might miss. The Elder Scrolls themselves exist in a space between definite realities. They are simultaneously records of what has happened, what is happening, and what might yet happen. As we explore their nature tonight, you too may find yourself in that peaceful space between wakefulness and sleep, between focused attention and gentle dreaming. Wherever your mind travels, know that this is part of the journey. Now, let us begin our exploration of these mysterious artifacts, objects of such power and significance that they give their name to an entire universe of stories. Let us uncover what we can about the Scrolls of Destiny, those fragments of divine insight that have shaped the fate of Tamriel across countless ages. Chapter 1. The Nature of the Unknowable. To speak of the origins of the Elder Scrolls is to attempt to describe the indescribable. Unlike most artifacts or relics in the world of Tamriel, the Elder Scrolls have no clear beginning. no moment of creation that scholars can identify. They seem to exist outside the normal flow of time, perhaps predating even the creation of Nirn itself. Some metaphysicians speculate that the scrolls may be fragments of creation itself, pieces of the original blueprint from which reality was formed. In the Imperial Library, there exists a rare text called Ruminations on the Elder Scrolls, written by Septimus Signus, a brilliant but ultimately maddened scholar who devoted his life to understanding these artifacts. In this text, Cygnus describes the scrolls as fragments of creation and suggests that they are echoes of the void, referring perhaps to the space between Aetherius and Oblivion, where the mortal plane exists. But what exactly are the Elder Scrolls in a physical sense? Here again, we encounter the limitations of mortal understanding. When unopened and unread, an Elder Scroll appears as a large parchment wrapped around ornate, cylindrical handles. The parchment itself seems to be made of a material unlike any other on Nirn, not quite paper, not quite metal, not quite fabric, but something that possesses qualities of all these materials, and more besides. The handles are typically adorned with precious metals and gems, though these adornments are thought to be later additions by mortals rather than intrinsic to the scrolls themselves. When opened, however, the true mystery of the scrolls reveals itself. The writing on an Elder Scroll is not fixed or static. It appears to shift and change before the reader's eyes, as if the very act of observation alters what is being observed. The symbols are not from any known alphabet or language, yet a trained reader can somehow extract meaning from them. More curious still, different readers may derive different knowledge from the same scroll, as if the artifacts respond to the questions in the reader's mind, rather than presenting fixed information. This dynamic quality of the scrolls has led some scholars to propose that they are not objects in the conventional sense at all, but rather intersections, points where the linear time that mortals experience meets the non-linear time of the divine. From this perspective, an Elder Scroll is not so much a record of events as it is a momentary glimpse into the very fabric of possibility itself. The exact number of Elder Scrolls in existence is unknown and may well be unknowable. In some periods of history, the imperial government claimed to possess dozens or even hundreds of scrolls, while at other times only a handful were known to exist. This inconsistency might simply reflect the difficulty of keeping track of such valuable artifacts across the turbulent history of Tamriel, but some believe it points to something more profound, that the scrolls themselves might come into and pass out of existence, or perhaps move between different planes of reality. One of the most peculiar qualities of the Elder Scrolls is their relationship to prophecy. Unlike traditional oracles or seers, who might experience visions of possible futures, the scrolls appear to contain all possible futures simultaneously. A skilled reader of the scrolls does not simply see what will happen, but rather navigates through branching pathways of what might happen. The more specific and immediate the event being sought, the clearer the vision becomes. Distant or contingent events remain murky, represented by symbols and metaphors that require careful interpretation. This property has made the scrolls immensely valuable to rulers and strategists throughout history. The Moth Priests, who study the scrolls, were often called upon to advise emperors about the consequences of various actions, to identify threats before they materialized, or to help locate powerful artifacts. But the practice has always been fraught with danger, as the nature of prophecy is inherently paradoxical. The very act of learning about a future may change the actions that lead to it, altering the prophecy itself. Beyond their prophetic qualities, The Elder Scrolls appear to possess other extraordinary capabilities. They have been known to bind powerful beings, altering fundamental aspects of reality, and even manipulating time itself. The banishment of Alduin, the World Eater, was accomplished using an Elder Scroll to cast the dragon forward in time, removing the threat from the present while preserving the cosmic role Alduin would ultimately need to fulfill at the end of time. Another remarkable aspect of the scrolls is their apparent indestructibility. Throughout the many wars and cataclysms that have ravaged Tamriel, no account exists of an Elder Scroll being destroyed or even damaged. They appear impervious to fire, blade, and magic alike. Some have been lost, hidden, or stolen, but none are known to have been unmade. To this quality has led to speculation that the scrolls exist partially outside of normal physical laws, making them immune to conventional forms of harm. The cosmic significance of the Elder Scrolls is perhaps best understood through their relationship to the concept of the Urbis, the totality of existence in the Elder Scrolls universe. The Urbis encompasses Aetherius, the realm of magic, and the original spirits, Oblivion, the chaotic realms of the Daedra, Mundus, the mortal plane, created by the sacrificed Aedra, and other, less well understood planes or dimensions. Some esoteric theories propose that the Elder Scrolls are not artifacts within this cosmic framework, but rather are the framework itself made briefly perceptible to mortal senses. By this understanding, the scrolls are not objects about reality. They are reality, or at least the underlying patterns that give rise to reality, momentarily crystallized into a form that mortals can interact with, however imperfectly. This would explain why the scrolls contain knowledge of all possible outcomes and why they cannot be destroyed. It would also explain their curious property of causing blindness in their readers, not as a punishment or side effect, but as the natural consequence of a mortal mind attempting to perceive the totality of existence directly, something it was never designed to do. If this theory is correct, then the study of the Elder Scrolls is not merely academic or even mystical. It is an attempt to understand the fundamental nature of existence itself. The Moth Priests who devote their lives to this study are not simply scholars, but spiritual seekers engaged in a profound quest for ultimate truth. The origins of the scrolls are further complicated by their apparent relationship to the divine beings who shaped the Elder Scrolls universe. Neither Aedra nor Daedra claim to have created the scrolls, and even these immensely powerful entities appear to be subject to the destinies that the scrolls reveal. This suggests that the scrolls may predate even the primordial spirits, perhaps originating in the interaction between Anu and Padme, the cosmic forces of stasis and change that gave rise to existence itself. In the Lunar Lorcan, a speculative text on cosmology, the author proposes that the material realm of Mundus was created as a sort of testing ground where the spirits could experience limitations and through those limitations achieve new kinds of growth and understanding. If this is true, the Elder Scrolls might represent the rules or parameters of this cosmic experiment, the underlying logic that governs how events unfold and how choices lead to consequences. This would mean that the scrolls are neither fully deterministic, predicting a fixed and unchangeable future, nor entirely open-ended, allowing for any possible outcome regardless of past actions. Rather, they represent the complex interplay between choice and consequence, mapping out how the decisions of countless beings, from gods to mortals, interact to create the tapestry of history. The way the scrolls respond differently to different readers supports this interpretation. A reader approaching a scroll with a specific question in mind may see symbols and patterns relevant to that question, while another reader with a different concern might derive entirely different knowledge from the same scroll. The scrolls do not dictate a single narrative, but rather reveal the complex network of possibilities that various actions might create. Perhaps the most profound mystery of the Elder Scrolls lies in their name itself. Why are they called Elder Scrolls? Elder than what? Some scholars suggest the name implies they are older than the Aedra themselves, the elder gods who sacrificed themselves to create the mortal plane. Others propose the name refers to their content, that they contain the elder knowledge, the primordial truths that underlie all other forms of understanding. A more poetic interpretation suggests that the scrolls are elder in the sense that they represent a form of wisdom that comes not from youth and vitality, but from age and perspective, the ability to see patterns across vast expanses of time, to recognize the cycles and rhythms that govern existence on a cosmic scale. Whatever their ultimate nature or origin, the Elder Scrolls remain one of the most fascinating enigmas in the universe that bears their name. They are simultaneously concrete artifacts that can be held, transported, and read, and abstract manifestations of time, fate, and possibility. They can reveal the future and alter the past. They grant knowledge and take sight. They are sought by the most powerful beings in existence, yet fully understood by none. For those who would seek to unravel these mysteries, the cost is high. The Moth Priests, who read the scrolls, accept blindness as the price of insight. Even the most disciplined and prepared reader will eventually lose their sight after multiple readings, a stark reminder that some knowledge comes at a cost. Yet more dangerous than physical blindness is the mental and spiritual disorientation that prolonged exposure to the scrolls can cause. Readers who spend too much time with the scrolls often lose their grip on conventional reality, becoming unable to distinguish between what is, what was, what might be, and what never could be. Their minds begin to operate like the scrolls themselves, perceiving all possibilities simultaneously and losing the ability to navigate the linear flow of time that anchors mortal experience. Despite these dangers, or perhaps because of them, the Elder Scrolls continue to exert a powerful fascination on scholars, mystics, and rulers throughout Tamriel. They represent the ultimate repository of knowledge, the answers to questions that have haunted mortals since they first gained consciousness. What is our destiny? How did we come to be? What lies beyond the veil of time? As we contemplate these profound mysteries, we might take comfort in the words of Urag Groshub, the awesome librarian of the College of Winterhold. The simplest way to put it is that the Elder Scrolls do not exist in our world the way that you and I do. They are fragments of creation from outside time. When they're needed, they just are. Perhaps this is wisdom enough for most of us to accept that some mysteries lie beyond complete comprehension, that the cosmos contains wonders that can be experienced but never fully explained. The Elder Scrolls, like dreams or moments of profound insight, offer glimpses of something larger than ourselves, reminders that reality is vaster and more complex than our everyday perceptions suggest. And with that thought, let us transition to explore those who have devoted their lives to studying these mysterious artifacts, the Moth Priests of the ancestor moth cult, whose ancient traditions have developed the only known methods for reading the scrolls without immediate harm. Chapter 2. The Moth Priests and their ancient tradition. In the white gold tower at the heart of the imperial city, in chambers far removed from the bustling politics of the Elder Council dwells an order of men and mer whose lives are dedicated to perhaps the most dangerous scholarly pursuit in all of Tamriel, the reading and interpretation of the Elder Scrolls. These are the Moth Priests, members of the cult of the ancestor Moth, an ancient order whose origins stretch back to the earliest days of the First Empire. The title Moth Priest is not merely poetic, but describes a profound aspect of their methodology. Central to their practice is a symbiotic relationship with a species of moth known as ancestor moths, delicate, seemingly ordinary insects that possess extraordinary metaphysical properties. These moths are drawn to the Elder Scrolls and to those who read them, serving as both guides and protectors in the perilous process of extracting knowledge from these cosmic artifacts. To understand the Moth Priests and their traditions, we must first appreciate the immense discipline required for their calling. When a young initiate joins the order, they typically begin a process of preparation that lasts decades. This preparation involves not only extensive study of history, language, and metaphysics, but also rigorous spiritual training designed to strengthen the mind against the disorienting effects of the scrolls. The novice begins with the study of what are called the preludes, historical records, and theoretical texts about the scrolls rather than the scrolls themselves. These provide a conceptual framework for understanding what the scrolls are and what they might contain, without exposing the student to the reality of the artifacts. During this phase, which typically lasts 5 to 10 years, the initiate also undergoes extensive training in meditation techniques, memory exercises, and specialized forms of logic that help prepare the mind for non-linear perceptions of time and causality. Only after mastering these preliminaries is the novice introduced to the ancestor moths themselves. This relationship begins gradually, with the initiate spending time in the moth-laden candle rooms, where the insects are cultured and cared for. The ancestor moths are not ordinary insects, but are believed to have a direct connection to the Idra, the sacrifice gods, whose essence forms the backbone of the mortal plane. By communion with these moths, the initiate begins to develop the subtle perceptual abilities needed to eventually approach the scrolls. The process of developing a relationship with the ancestor moths is described in a rare text called Effects of the Elder Scrolls, which outlines the gradual steps by which a reader prepares to engage with the artifacts. First, the initiate learns to attract the moths and become attuned to their subtle presence. Then, through extended meditation in the presence of the moths, the initiate develops what the text calls the second sight, a form of perception that transcends ordinary vision and allows for the apprehension of metaphysical patterns. Once an initiate has established a strong connection with the ancestor moths and demonstrated sufficient mental discipline, they are allowed their first controlled exposure to an Elder Scroll. This initial reading is brief and heavily supervised by senior members of the Order. The experience is invariably disorienting and often physically taxing, leaving the new reader with headaches, temporary visual disturbances, and sometimes more severe symptoms that can take weeks to subside. Yet despite these challenges, most initiates who reach this stage describe the experience as profoundly meaningful, even transformative. One account preserved in the Imperial Library describes the first reading as a moment when the veil between what is and what might be becomes gossamer thin, when the mind touches something vast and ancient that dwells both everywhere and nowhere. After this initial exposure, the training enters its most intensive phase. The novice begins a methodical process of building tolerance for the scrolls, gradually increasing the duration and depth of each reading, while developing techniques to interpret the shifting symbols and extract coherent knowledge from them. This phase of training typically lasts many years, sometimes decades, and not all initiates successfully complete it. Some find the mental strain too great and return to supporting roles within the order. Others, tragically, progress too quickly or too carelessly and suffer the consequences of unprotected exposure, rapid blindness, or even forms of madness from which recovery is difficult. For those who do persevere, the path leads eventually to full investiture as a Moth Priest, able to read and interpret the scrolls with a degree of safety, though never without cost. Every reading, even by the most experienced priest, takes a toll on the eyes and mind. Accumulated exposure over a lifetime of service invariably leads to blindness, a sacrifice that members of the order accept as the price of their calling. But what exactly happens when a trained Moth Priest reads an Elder Scroll? The process begins with a ritual involving the ancestor moths. The priest enters a state of deep meditation, surrounding themselves with the moths, which gather around the reader's head and shoulders. As they settle, they create what is described as a second veil, a kind of protective barrier that filters the raw power of the scroll, making it comprehensible to the mortal mind without causing immediate harm. With this protection in place, the priest carefully unseals and unrolls the scroll. What happens next is difficult to describe in ordinary language, as it involves perceptions that exist outside normal sensory experience. The Moth Priests themselves often resort to metaphor, speaking of reading the fabric of time or hearing the music of possibility. What seems clear is that the experience is not simply visual. It involves a complex synesthesia in which symbols trigger understanding that encompasses multiple senses and even concepts that have no sensory equivalent. During this state of expanded perception, the priest might focus on a specific question or area of inquiry, using complex mental techniques to navigate through the infinite possibilities contained within the scroll. The moths assist in this process, their movements and subtle energies helping to guide the reader toward relevant patterns and away from dangers or irrelevancies. The knowledge gained from such a reading is rarely straightforward or literal. An Elder Scroll does not typically reveal direct answers, like the invading army will arrive on the 16th of last seed, or the lost artifact lies beneath the eastern tower. Rather, it presents symbolic patterns, archetypal images, and complex metaphors that must be interpreted through a combination of disciplined logic, intuition, and reference to historical precedents. This is why the extensive training of the Moth Priests includes not only metaphysical disciplines, but also deep study of history, mythology, and even the natural sciences. A symbol glimpsed in the scroll might represent a celestial alignment, a recurring social pattern, or a mythological archetype. Without the contextual knowledge to place such symbols within a framework of understanding, even the most direct revelation would remain obscure. The Moth Priests maintain extensive records of their readings and interpretations, creating what amounts to a centuries-long conversation about the meaning of the scrolls. These records themselves form a kind of metatext, revealing patterns not just within individual scrolls, but across multiple readings by different priests over time. From these accumulated interpretations emerge deeper insights than any single reading could provide. The headquarters of the Moth Priests has changed several times throughout history. During the height of the Second Empire, they maintained their primary temple in the White Gold Tower itself, with the largest known collection of Elder Scrolls kept in a specially constructed vault. beneath the imperial palace. After the fall of the Septim Line and the subsequent Oblivion crisis, the Order relocated many of their operations to a fortified monastery called the Temple of the Ancestor Moths, situated in the remote highlands of Cyrodiil. This more remote location served multiple purposes. It provided greater security for the scrolls during a time of political instability, offered isolation conducive to the deep meditation required for reading the scrolls, and placed the priests closer to certain groves of trees that produce a particular subspecies of the ancestor moth, considered especially sensitive to metaphysical currents. The daily life of a moth priest is characterized by an austere discipline that outsiders might find daunting. Their day begins before dawn, with extended periods of meditation, followed by scholarly study and the care of the ancestor moths. Physical exercise is also an important part of their regimen, as maintaining bodily health is considered essential for the mental resilience needed to engage with the scrolls. The priests observe periods of fasting before and after reading sessions and maintain specific dietary practices thought to enhance mental clarity and protect against the disorienting effects of the scrolls. They abstain from intoxicants of all kinds and practice various forms of sensory control, training themselves to function with minimal reliance on ordinary perception, a discipline that serves them well when blindness eventually comes. Despite this ascetic lifestyle, the Moth Priests are not complete recluses. Throughout much of imperial history, they served as advisors to emperors and elder councils, providing insights derived from the scrolls to guide political and military decisions. They also maintained scholarly exchanges with other centers of learning, such as the Mages Guild, the College of Winterhold, and the Crystal Tower of the Somerset Isles before its destruction. The relationship between the Moth Priests and the various political powers of Tamriel has always been complex and sometimes contentious. While rulers naturally coveted the strategic advantage that foreknowledge might provide, the priests themselves maintained a careful independence, refusing to become mere tools of state power. They developed elaborate protocols governing what information they would share and with whom, often couching their revelations in deliberately ambiguous terms that required careful interpretation. This political neutrality was reinforced by the cosmological perspective that reading the scrolls inevitably fosters. When one routinely perceives the vast patterns of time and possibility, the short-term ambitions of kings and emperors come to seem small and transient by comparison. The Moth Priests concern themselves with deeper currents, the cycles of ascendance and decline that shape entire eras, the recurrence of mythic patterns across millennia, the slow unfolding of prophecies that might take centuries to fulfill. Not all Moth Priests maintain this detachment, of course. Throughout the Order's history, there have been individuals who became entangled in the politics of their day, sometimes with tragic consequences. The most notorious case is perhaps that of Moth Priest Crassius Furia, who in the late Second Era became advisor to a particularly ambitious potentate. Furia's increasingly specific prophecies about the success of his patron's military campaigns raised suspicions even within his own order. Investigation revealed that he had abandoned the traditional methods of the Moth Priests and was forcing revelations from the scrolls through forbidden techniques. His end was as spectacular as it was cautionary, attempting to extract knowledge about the ultimate fate of his patron's dynasty. He suffered a form of metaphysical backlash that left him not merely blind, but erased from time itself, his existence reduced to a few fragmentary records and the hollow robes found in his chambers after his disappearance. Such cautionary tales reinforce the Moth Priests' commitment to their traditional methods and ethical frameworks. The reading of the scrolls is never approached lightly or for trivial purposes. Each engagement with a scroll is preceded by extensive preparation and followed by lengthy periods of integration and recovery. The knowledge gained is treated with reverence and shared only after careful consideration of its implications. For all their discipline and preparation, the Moth Priests harbor no illusions about the ultimate cost of their calling. The path of the scroll reader invariably leads to blindness, what they call the price of knowledge. As a priest's exposure to the scrolls accumulates over years or decades, their eyesight gradually deteriorates. First comes difficulty with colors and fine details, then increasing blurriness and the narrowing of the visual field, and finally complete blindness. Yet what outsiders might see as tragedy, the priests themselves view as transformation. They speak of the sight beyond sight that develops as ordinary vision fades, a form of perception that relies less on physical senses and more on the metaphysical awareness cultivated through years of communion with the scrolls and the ancestor moths. The most venerable members of the order, those who have been blind for many years, are said to perceive the world in ways that transcend ordinary understanding, sensing patterns and connections invisible to those reliant on mere eyes. These elder priests, blind in body but possessed of profound inner vision, occupy a special place within the hierarchy of the order. They serve as teachers, counselors, and interpreters of last resort for the most challenging revelations from the scrolls. Their quarters are typically located in the heart of the temple, surrounded by gardens designed to be experienced through touch, smell, and the subtle perceptions that develop after ordinary sight is gone. The Moth Priests prepare for their eventual blindness from the earliest days of their training. They learn to read by touch, to navigate by sound and memory, to record their thoughts through special writing frames that guide the hand without relying on sight. These practical skills complement the deeper metaphysical training that prepares them for the shift from external to internal seeing. Even at the height of their power and influence, when their temples were filled with hundreds of priests and scores of elder scrolls, the cult of the ancestor moth remained humble before the ultimate mystery of the artifacts they studied. The most honest among them readily admitted that for all their centuries of dedicated study, they had barely scratched the surface of what the scrolls contain. Each answer revealed new questions. Each insight opened doorways to deeper mysteries. This humility before the unknowable is perhaps the most profound wisdom the Moth Priests have to offer. In a universe filled with beings who claim godhood, where mages seek to bend reality to their will, and emperors aspire to reshape the world according to their visions, the Moth Priests stand as a reminder that some truths lie beyond even the most powerful mortal grasp. They teach us that wisdom begins not with claiming knowledge, but with recognizing its limits, that true insight comes not from imposing our understanding on reality, but from allowing reality to reshape our understanding. As we leave the sanctified chambers of the Moth Priests and their silent communion with cosmic mysteries, let us carry with us this spirit of humble inquiry, for in the next chapter of our exploration, we will venture into even more perplexing territory, the nature of prophecy in a universe where time itself might not be the straight line that our mortal experience suggests, but something far more complex and malleable. Chapter 3. The Nature of Prophecy in a Mutable Universe. In the world of the Elder Scrolls, prophecy is not merely the prediction of future events, but something far more complex and profound. It exists at the intersection of fate and free will, of fixed destiny and infinite possibility. To understand prophecy as it manifests through the Elder Scrolls, we must first set aside our conventional understanding of time as a simple linear progression from past to present to future. The metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls universe suggests that time is more like a river with countless branching paths and eddies, or perhaps a tapestry with countless interweaving threads. Some events are fixed points, cosmic necessities that must occur in some form across all possible timelines. Others are fluid, contingent upon the choices of innumerable beings, from the humblest mortal to the most powerful Daedric prince. The Elder Scrolls themselves seem to contain all of these possibilities simultaneously. When a trained reader looks into a scroll, they do not see a single definitive future, but rather a complex web of potential outcomes. The skill of prophecy lies not in simply reporting what will happen, but in identifying which potential futures are most likely, which turning points are most significant, and which patterns repeat across different possible timelines. Perhaps the most famous prophecy in the Elder Scrolls universe is the prophecy of the Dragonborn, also known as the prophecy of the last Dragonborn. This ancient foretelling, believed to be derived from an Elder Scroll, speaks of the return of Alduin the World Eater and the emergence of a mortal with the soul of a dragon who would stand against him. The prophecy is recorded in a text called the Book of the Dragonborn, though this is itself a transcription and interpretation of far older sources. The prophecy reads, in part, when misrule takes its place at the 8 corners of the world, when the brass tower walks and time is reshaped, when the thrice blessed fail and the red tower trembles, when the dragonborn ruler loses his throne and the white tower falls, when the snow tower lies sundered, kingless, bleeding, the world eater wakes and the wheel turns upon the last dragonborn. This prophecy illustrates several key aspects of how prophecy functions in the Elder Scrolls universe. First, it is couched in metaphorical and symbolic language rather than direct statements. The brass tower refers to the Numidium, a colossal brass construct created by the Dwemer. The red tower is Red Mountain in Morrowind. The snow tower is the throat of the world in Skyrim. These symbolic references require interpretation, and different scholars might understand their meanings in different ways. Second, the prophecy identifies a sequence of events that must occur before the final prediction comes to pass. This is typical of Elder Scrolls prophecies. They often describe a series of preconditions or signs that herald a more significant outcome. This structure reflects the branching nature of possibility. Each precondition represents a narrowing of potential futures, making the final outcome increasingly likely, but never absolutely certain until all conditions are met. Third, the prophecy contains elements that span thousands of years of history. Some of the events it describes, such as the activation of the Numidium, the year the brass tower walks, occurred in the late Second Era, while others, such as the assassination of Emperor Uriel Septim VII, year the Dragonborn ruler loses his throne, took place near the end of the Third Era. This vast temporal scope is characteristic of the most significant prophecies. They identify patterns that unfold across eras, rather than merely predicting short-term events. The interpretation of such prophecies is an art as much as a science. Even the most skilled Moth Priests might disagree about the precise meaning of prophetic symbols or the specific events they refer to. This ambiguity is not a flaw in the prophecies themselves, but rather a necessary feature of communications that bridge the gap between linear mortal perception and the non-linear reality of time as it exists beyond our limited understanding. Some scholars propose that prophecies are not so much predictions of what will happen as they are descriptions of what must happen for reality to maintain its coherence. In this view, prophecies identify the load-bearing structures of time, events that serve as keystones holding together the arch of history. Without these key events, the entire fabric of reality might unravel or collapse into chaos. This interpretation helps explain why certain prophesied events seem immune to alteration even by extremely powerful beings. It's not that these events are arbitrarily fated to occur, but rather that they are necessary components of reality itself. The return of Alduin, for instance, is not merely a historical event, but a cosmological necessity. The World Eater's role in ending one cycle of time and beginning another is fundamental to how reality functions in the Elder Scrolls universe. Yet, not all prophecies share this immutable quality. Many refer to events that might or might not come to pass, depending on the choices made by key individuals. These contingent prophecies are often the most useful for practical purposes, as they allow actors to navigate between different possible futures, choosing paths that lead to more desirable outcomes. Throughout the history of Tamriel, there have been numerous significant prophecies that have shaped the course of events. The Nerevarine prophecy foretold the reincarnation of the Chimeri General Nerevar and the fall of the Tribunal of Morrowind. The prophecies of Saint Alessia guided the rebellion that overthrew the Elite slave masters and established the first empire of humans. The strange verses of Maruk presaged the rise and fall of the Alessian order and its fanatical monotheism. Each of these prophecies illustrates different aspects of how fate and choice interact in the Elder Scrolls universe. The Nerevarine prophecy, for instance, contains substantial ambiguity about the nature of the foretold reincarnation. Is the Nerevarine literally the reborn soul of Nerevar, or simply an individual who fulfills the prophesied role? The prophecy itself does not definitively answer this question, leaving room for various interpretations and, significantly, for the choice of the individual who steps into the prophesied role to define what kind of Nerevarine they will be. This interplay between determination and free will lies at the heart of prophecy in the Elder Scrolls. Prophecies identify patterns and necessities, but they rarely, if ever, eliminate choice entirely. Even when certain outcomes are inevitable, the path to those outcomes and the meaning they hold for those involved remain matters of choice. The relationship between prophecy and the concept of the hero is particularly significant. In many of the major prophetic cycles of Tamriel's history, a specific individual, often the player character in the Elder Scrolls games, fulfills a prophesied role that allows them to fundamentally affect the course of history. These heroes occupy a special metaphysical position, embodying what some scholars call the prisoner archetype, individuals who begin outside the established order and thus possess unique freedom to change it. The prophesied hero often stands at the nexus of multiple possible futures, their choices determining which potential timeline becomes reality. In this sense, prophecy does not constrain the hero, but rather identifies them as a critical point of choice and change. The prophecy may indicate that a hero will emerge and face a specific challenge, but how they face it and what they become through that encounter remains undetermined. This concept helps explain a curious feature of many Elder Scrolls prophecies, their tendency to be partially self-fulfilling. Knowledge of a prophecy often leads individuals to make choices that bring about the prophesied events, yet this does not make the prophecy any less genuine. The prophecy identifies a pattern that exists across multiple possible futures, a pattern that emerges from the complex interplay of countless choices rather than being imposed from outside. The Moth Priests are acutely aware of this recursive relationship between prophecy and choice. They are extremely cautious about how and with whom they share prophetic knowledge, understanding that revealing a prophecy inherently changes the probability landscape of the future. This awareness has contributed to their tradition of couching prophecies in symbolic language, not merely as a poetic flourish, but as a practical measure that allows for multiple interpretations and thus preserves the role of choice in how prophecies unfold. The metaphysical significance of prophecy extends beyond specific predicted events to the very nature of time itself in the Elder Scrolls universe. Some esoteric texts suggest that prophecies are not merely descriptions of the future, but active forces that help maintain the coherence of the time stream. They function as something like cosmic anchors, fixed points that prevent reality from drifting into complete chaos. This view is supported by the observed relationship between prophetic fulfillment and certain large-scale temporal phenomena, such as dragon breaks, periods when linear time itself ruptures, allowing multiple contradictory events to occur simultaneously. These breaks in time often coincide with moments when prophecies reach fulfillment, or when prophesied events fail to occur as foreseen. It's as if the tension between what was prophesied and what actually occurs creates a strain on the fabric of time itself, sometimes resulting in its temporary fracture. The most dramatic example of this relationship was the Middle Dawn, a dragon break that lasted 1008 years and coincided with the attempted alteration of a divine prophecy by the Alessian Order. In trying to forcibly resolve the contradictions between their strict monotheistic doctrine and the undeniable reality of multiple divine beings, the Murukati Selectives performed a ritual that not only failed to achieve their goal, but also shattered linear time for over a millennium. Such examples serve as cautionary tales about the dangers of directly opposing prophetic patterns, particularly those derived from the Elder Scrolls. This does not mean that prophecies cannot be subverted or reinterpreted, but rather that attempts to simply negate them often lead to unexpected and potentially catastrophic consequences. A more sophisticated approach to working with prophecy involves recognizing that most prophecies contain conditional elements and inherent ambiguities that provide space for intervention. A prophecy might state that when A, B, and C occur, then D will follow, but leave open the possibility of preventing one of the preconditions or of fulfilling them in unexpected ways that change the nature of the final outcome. The role of prophetic interpretation becomes crucial in this context. The same prophecy, read differently, might yield entirely different understandings of what is fixed and what is changeable. Throughout Tamriel's history, there have been numerous scholarly and theological disputes about the meaning of various prophecies, with different interpretations sometimes leading to dramatically different courses of action. These interpretive differences reflect not just scholarly disagreement, but fundamental philosophical divisions about the nature of time and choice. Some traditions, particularly those associated with elven cultures, tend to view time as more deterministic, with prophecies representing glimpses of an already established future. Human cultures, by contrast, often emphasize the role of choice and the potential for prophecies to be redirected through sufficient will or insight. Neither view is entirely correct or entirely wrong, according to the metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls universe. Time is neither completely fixed nor completely fluid. Prophecy is neither absolute destiny nor mere suggestion. The truth lies in the complex interplay between necessity and possibility, between patterns that must be fulfilled and the infinite variations in how that fulfillment might manifest. This paradoxical nature of prophecy mirrors the paradoxical nature of the Elder Scrolls themselves, objects that simultaneously exist and do not exist, that contain knowledge which cannot be known, that show futures which both will and will not come to pass. The prophecies derived from the scrolls carry this same fundamental ambiguity, serving not as simplistic fortune-telling, but as glimpses into the complex tapestry of possibility that underlies the apparent solidity of our experienced reality. As we contemplate these mysteries, we might find wisdom in the approach of the most experienced Moth Priests. They neither dismiss prophecy as meaningless nor accept it as absolute fate. Instead, they treat prophetic knowledge as a map of possibilities, a guide to the currents and eddies in the river of time. They understand that while certain destinations may be inevitable, the journey toward them remains a matter of choice, and that the meaning of prophesied events emerges not from their mere occurrence, but from how we choose to respond to them. With this understanding of prophecy's complex nature, let us now turn our attention to one of the most perplexing temporal phenomena in the Elder Scrolls universe, the Dragon Break, when time itself shatters and reforms, allowing multiple contradictory realities to exist simultaneously. Chapter 4: Dragon Breaks and Temporal Paradoxes. In the serene halls of the Arcane University, in the Imperial City, there exists a peculiar scroll that is not counted among the Elder Scrolls, yet contains information so disturbing that its study is restricted to the most senior scholars. This document, known as Where Were You When the Dragon Broke, records first-hand accounts of one of the most profound and perplexing phenomena in the metaphysics of Tamriel, the Dragon Break. The term Dragon Break derives from the Aldmeri conception of Akatosh, the god of time, who is often represented as a dragon. When the dragon breaks, time itself fractures, creating a period in which linear causality collapses. During such events, multiple contradictory realities can exist simultaneously, and individuals may experience the same events in completely different ways, or even live through entirely different sequences of events. To the mortal mind, accustomed to the steady progression from past to present to future, the concept of a dragon break is almost impossible to fully comprehend. It is not merely time moving at different speeds or flowing in different directions. It is the complete suspension of the normal rules of temporal reality, allowing mutually exclusive events to be simultaneously true. The most extensively documented dragon break in Tamriel's history is the so-called Middle Dawn, which occurred during the First Era, when a sect of the Alessian Order, known as the Marukati Selectives, attempted a ritual of staggering ambition. Their goal was to cleanse the god Akatosh of elements they considered corrupted by elven influence, to separate him entirely from the elven time god Oriel. The exact nature of their ritual remains obscure, but what is known is that it involved the use of the Staff of Towers, an artifact of immense power, at a location known as the Starry Heart, likely a metaphysical nexus point. Whatever they did, the consequences were immediate and catastrophic. The ritual did not simply achieve or fail to achieve its intended purpose. It shattered time itself. For 1008 years by conventional reckoning, Tamriel existed in a state of temporal non-linearity. The accounts collected in Where Were You When the Dragon Broke describe the profound disorientation of this period. One witness writes of watching the sun rising and setting at the same time, Another recalls aging backwards, growing younger as his memories of the future gradually faded. A priestess of Kinnereth recounts forests growing, burning, and regrowing in the span of days, only to have never existed at all when she returned the following morning. What makes these accounts all the more unsettling is their inconsistency. Different observers experienced the Middle Dawn in wildly different ways, and all of these contradictory experiences appear to have been equally real. This is the defining feature of a dragon break, not merely confusion about what happened, but the simultaneous occurrence of mutually exclusive events. When the Middle Dawn finally ended, and linear time reasserted itself, most beings in Tamriel had no memory of the dragon break at all. Their minds, unable to reconcile contradictory sequences of events, simply constructed a continuous narrative that bridged the before and after, filling the gap with fabricated memories that created the illusion of normal temporal flow. Only certain individuals, particularly those with deep metaphysical training or unusual spiritual connections, retained fragmented recollections of the true nature of the dragon break. The aftermath of the Middle Dawn presented profound challenges for historians, theologians, and metaphysicians. How could events during a period of non-linear time be recorded in a historical record that presupposes linearity? What happened to souls that underwent multiple contradictory fates? Did the Marukati selectives achieve their goal of separating Akatosh from Oriel, or did they fail, or did both outcomes occur simultaneously? These questions remain largely unanswered, though various traditions offer their own interpretations. What seems clear is that the Middle Dawn left permanent scars on the fabric of reality in Tamriel, subtle inconsistencies in history and theology that persist to the present day. The very fact that different cultures have different understandings of Akatosh may itself be a consequence of the selective's ritual, with all contradictory versions being simultaneously true in some sense. While the Middle Dawn is the most prolonged dragon break in recorded history, it is not the only one. Another well-documented instance is the so-called Warp in the West, which occurred at the end of the Third Era in the Iliac Bay region. This dragon break lasted only 3 days by conventional reckoning, but in that brief span, multiple contradictory political outcomes all occurred simultaneously. Prior to the Warp in the West, the Iliac Bay region was divided among numerous small kingdoms and city-states. Catalyst for the dragon break appears to have been the activation of a Dwemer artifact called Numidium, the brass god, powered by the Mantella, a soul gem of immense power. Multiple factions gained control of this construct simultaneously, an impossibility under normal temporal conditions, but the defining feature of a dragon break. When linear time reasserted itself after 3 days, the political landscape of the Iliac Bay had been completely transformed. Where dozens of small states had existed before, now there were just 4 major powers: Sentinel, Wayrest, Orsinium, and the annexed territory of the Empire. Somehow, each of these powers had conquered the region, and all of these contradictory conquests were equally true in the resulting timeline. Witnesses to the Warp in the West report 3 days of inexplicable but peaceful confusion. Unlike the Middle Dawn, most people retain some awareness that something strange had occurred, though few could articulate exactly what. The Imperial Simulacrum, the official historical record commissioned by Emperor Uriel Septim VII, simply states that a miracle occurred, perhaps the most diplomatic way of describing an event where multiple contradictory political outcomes somehow merged into a single resulting reality. The metaphysical implications of the Warp in the West are profound. It suggests that dragon breaks are not merely periods of confusion or psychological disorientation, but events where reality itself becomes malleable, where multiple possible futures can coexist, and then somehow merge into a composite timeline that incorporates elements of each. This understanding of dragon breaks is further supported by a third documented instance known as the Red Moment, or the Time Wound. This dragon break occurred in the late Merithic era at the throat of the world in Skyrim, when ancient Nord heroes used an Elder Scroll against the dragon Alduin. Their intended purpose was to learn the Dragon Rend Shout, a Thuum specifically designed to target dragons, but in either desperation or inspiration, they instead used the Elder Scroll itself as a weapon against Alduin. The result was a localized dragon break that cast Alduin forward in time, removing him from the Merithic era and depositing him in the Fourth Era. This event created what is known as the Time Wound, a persistent temporal anomaly at the throat of the world where time is visibly distorted. Those with sufficient sensitivity can perceive the echoes of the ancient battles still occurring, as if the event exists perpetually in a moment outside normal time. The Time Wound demonstrates the close connection between Elder Scrolls and dragon breaks. The scrolls themselves exist partially outside normal time, containing knowledge of all possible pasts and futures. When used not just for reading, but as active instruments to manipulate reality, they can tear the fabric of time itself, creating the conditions for a dragon break. This connection raises profound questions about the relationship between the scrolls and the god of time, Akatosh. Some esoteric scholars propose that the Elder Scrolls are not distinct from Akatosh, but are in some sense aspects of him, fragments of the time dragon's consciousness, made manifest and perceptible to mortals by this understanding. To read an Elder Scroll is to commune directly with the god of time, and to use one to manipulate time is to briefly usurp a divine function, with all the perilous consequences that implies. Others suggest that the scrolls represent a power even more fundamental than the gods themselves, the underlying patterns of possibility from which reality itself is woven. In this view, Akatosh is not the creator of time, but rather its first and greatest servant, maintaining the linear flow of time precisely to prevent the chaos of dragon breaks from becoming the permanent state of reality. Whatever their true nature, it seems clear that the Elder Scrolls are intimately linked with dragon breaks, serving both as catalysts for such events and as perhaps the only reliable records of what truly occurs during them. The scrolls can perceive and record events even when time itself is non-linear, preserving knowledge that would otherwise be lost when contradictory timelines merge back into a single reality. This unique capability makes the scrolls invaluable to those who study dragon breaks, but it also means that the knowledge they contain about such events is particularly dangerous. To read an Elder Scrolls account of a dragon break is to expose one's mind to fundamentally contradictory information, to learn of events that both did and did not happen, of beings who both existed and never existed, of causes that both preceded and followed their effects. Even for trained Moth Priests, the strain of processing such paradoxical knowledge is immense. The disorientation that follows readings related to dragon breaks is reportedly far more severe than normal, with some readers experiencing temporary slips in their own temporal perception, reliving moments multiple times, perceiving future events as if they had already occurred, or finding themselves unable to distinguish between memory and anticipation. For this reason, such readings are typically conducted only by the most experienced priests, those who have developed both the mental discipline to withstand temporal disorientation and the wisdom to recognize when further exploration would pose unacceptable risks. Even then, The knowledge gained is shared only in highly controlled circumstances, with careful attention to how it is phrased and contextualized to minimize its disruptive potential. The implications of dragon breaks extend far beyond academic curiosity or historical record-keeping. They raise profound questions about the nature of reality itself in the Elder Scrolls universe. If multiple contradictory events can all be true simultaneously, what does this mean for concepts like cause and effect, choice and consequence, fate and free will? Some philosophical traditions, particularly those associated with the Psijic order, suggest that what we perceive as normal, linear time is merely a convenient illusion, a simplified version of reality that our limited mortal minds can comprehend. By this understanding, the true nature of time is always non-linear, always full of overlapping possibilities. A dragon break simply removes the filter that normally shields us from this overwhelming complexity, allowing us to briefly perceive reality as it actually is, rather than as we need it to be. Other traditions, especially those connected to the worship of Akatosh, take the opposite view. They maintain that linear time is the true and proper state of reality, established by divine will for the benefit of mortal existence. Dragon breaks, in this understanding, are wounds in the natural order, dangerous aberrations that threaten the very foundation of existence. The eventual return to linear time represents not the reimposition of an illusion, but the healing of a cosmic injury. The truth likely lies somewhere between these extremes, in the complex relationship between mortal perception, divine intention, and the underlying patterns of possibility that the Elder Scrolls represent. What seems clear is that dragon breaks are not merely curiosities or anomalies, but revealing glimpses into the deeper structure of reality in the Elder Scrolls universe. Moments when the curtain is pulled back, showing us that the world is stranger and more complex than our ordinary experience suggests. For most inhabitants of Tamriel, dragon breaks remain distant abstractions, strange events from history books or theological debates with little relevance to daily life. But for those who study the Elder Scrolls, who seek to understand the deepest mysteries of existence, these temporal fractures represent both the greatest challenges and the most profound opportunities for insight. The study of dragon breaks continues in the present era, though with appropriate caution. The Moth Priests maintain careful records of all known instances, watchful for patterns that might help predict or even prevent future occurrences. Metaphysicians at the College of Winterhold and other centers of magical learning develop theories about the underlying mechanics of temporal distortion, seeking to understand how reality sustains itself through such profound disruptions. And throughout Tamriel, ordinary people continue their lives largely unaware of how fragile the linear progression of their experience truly is, how closely they exist to the precipice of temporal chaos. Perhaps this ignorance is a blessing, a necessary shelter from knowledge too vast and disorienting for most minds to bear. As we conclude our exploration of dragon breaks and the fracturing of time, we might reflect on the wisdom of the Moth Priests, who have devoted untold generations to the study of the Elder Scrolls and the temporal mysteries they contain. They teach that truth is not always found in definitive answers or comprehensive understanding, but sometimes in the humble recognition of our own limitations, in the acceptance that some mysteries may always lie just beyond our full comprehension. With this thought, we prepare to bring our journey through the mysteries of the Elder Scrolls to a close, drawing together the threads of creation and destruction, prophecy and paradox that we have explored throughout this peaceful contemplation. As our journey through the mysteries of the Elder Scrolls draws to a close, we find ourselves perhaps with more questions than answers, and this, I believe, is exactly as it should be. The scrolls themselves represent the ultimate expression of mystical uncertainty, of knowledge that exists at the very edge of mortal comprehension. We have explored the enigmatic nature of the scrolls themselves, artifacts that seem to exist simultaneously within time and beyond it, containing all possible pasts and futures within their shifting patterns. We have walked the quiet halls of the Moth Priests, those dedicated scholars who sacrifice their sight to glimpse cosmic truths, who develop inner vision as their outer eyes grow dim. We have contemplated the nature of prophecy in a universe where time branches like a river, where fate and choice dance in an eternal complex embrace. And we have stood in awe before the concept of dragon breaks, those moments when time itself shatters, allowing contradictory realities to coexist before merging back into a unified, though forever changed, timeline. Throughout these explorations, we have encountered a recurring theme: the limits of mortal understanding. Even the most dedicated scholars within the Elder Scrolls universe readily admit that their knowledge of the scrolls is fragmentary at best. The Moth Priests, who have studied the scrolls for centuries, describe themselves as children gathering pretty shells at the edge of an infinite ocean of knowledge. There is profound wisdom in this humility. In a world filled with beings who claim godhood, where mages and monarchs seek to bend reality to their will, the most insightful students of the Elder Scrolls recognize that true wisdom begins with acknowledging the vastness of what we do not and perhaps cannot know. This recognition need not lead to despair or nihilism. Rather, it opens the door to a different kind of understanding, one based not on mastery or control, but on respectful participation in mysteries larger than ourselves. The greatest readers of the scrolls do not seek to dominate the knowledge they contain, but to commune with it, to allow themselves to be changed by their encounter with cosmic patterns. As you rest now, perhaps drifting towards sleep, consider how this wisdom might apply beyond the fictional universe of the Elder Scrolls. Our own world, too, contains mysteries that exceed our full comprehension: the vastness of the cosmos, the depths of consciousness, the infinite complexity of relationships between living beings. Like the Moth Priests, we might find peace, not in demanding complete understanding, but in approaching these mysteries with reverence and openness, allowing them to transform us, even as we study them. In our next episode, Towers of Power, we will explore another fundamental aspect of Elder Scrolls metaphysics: the mysterious structures that dot the landscape of Tamriel and serve as anchors for reality itself. We will learn about White Gold Tower, Red Mountain, Snow Throat, and other physical manifestations of cosmic principles, understanding how these towers maintain the coherence of the mortal plane and what happens when they fall. Until then, may your dreams be peaceful, filled with the gentle wisdom of ages long past. May you rest as comfortably as an Elder Scroll in its quiet chamber, holding infinite possibilities within your slumbering mind. Thank you for journeying with me through these cosmic mysteries. Sleep well, traveler, and remember that even the greatest questions sometimes find their answers, not in waking thought, but in the quiet wisdom of dreams.